Now, the tax collectors were seen as morally unclean, spiritually unclean. The low people of society, they were seen as Jewish traitors. They were hated by the Roman government, and they were hated by their own people. They had nowhere to go. They were in the life all by themselves. Their own Jewish people didn't like them. The Roman government used them. They were really abusing the system because they were told to. So when you saw someone like Matthew, most people would overlook this person as not being able to be used by God. They were so morally unclean because they were handling what they would see as the devil's money. And so now you see somebody who's culturally and morally unclean and really probably didn't have the greatest character. Matthew didn't have a great character at all. And Jesus comes on the scene and he looks at him, and while everybody else is saying, this is the person that can't be used by God, Jesus is saying, this is the one I'm going to choose to use. It's so different from the way we would pick people. We disqualify people so quickly because of their struggles. And the truth is, what we do is, if there's struggles within this box, then we don't disqualify them. But if there's struggles beyond our comfort, we do disqualify them. So can a person who has a certain addiction be used by God in a powerful way? It may not make you comfortable with the answer is yes. So I want you to think about this, because in this particular context, people couldn't stand Matthew. He had great, deep moral issues, and Jesus says, this is the one I want to choose. And I'm going to make you very uncomfortable, and I'm going to do it on purpose because it's the truth, and you have to understand how far God's grace expands. But God always chooses people to use that makes other people so uncomfortable. He chooses people you and I wouldn't choose. He chooses people that sit on the other political side than you do for his glory. Does that bother you? That God would choose someone that doesn't align with you culturally, politically, and spiritually, and morally, and say, I'm going to use him for my glory? It probably does. But God doesn't choose people based off of our comfort. He chooses people based off of his plan and his purposes. When you see God, you've seen God use people that you were like, I just saw what they did last weekend, and now they're getting baptized today. That's called the goodness of God. It's called the mercy of God and the grace of God. And he chooses based upon his mercy, goodness, and grace. And here, he's calling Matthew, which makes everybody uncomfortable. And he says, follow me to Matthew. And Matthew doesn't say, hey, my life's not clean, my life isn't great. He just says, follow me. And when Jesus says, follow me, here's what this phrase means in the Greek. It means that I want you to have a lifelong allegiance to me, no matter how messed up you are, Matthew. And here's the thing, when Jesus called Matthew, Matthew wasn't going to be perfect after the call. He was still going to have a lot of failures, a lot of moral issues, a lot of character issues. Yet Jesus says, follow me. And I want you to see Matthew's response, because Matthew could have been like, I'm not good enough, I'm horrible, and he could have shamed himself. Then he could have thought, none of them will follow me. They all hate me. What am I supposed to do? But here's the real self, to have an intimate moment with whoever's in front of him, which now we're going to see he's having an intimate moment with who? Here's the scripture going to tell us, many tax collectors. So now Jesus is bringing in the people that everybody else does not like, the people that have character issues, that are morally corrupt. And Jesus says, I'm going to recline with you, and we're going to have an intimate moment. I know that everybody else has thrown you away, but we're going to have an intimate moment. And then it says he's eating with the sinners. Now, we don't know exactly what the sinners were struggling with, but I want you to think about this. They were so jacked up that people didn't even give them a title. They gave them the title sinners. It'd be like someone coming up to you like, hey, do you and your sinner friends want to come to lunch after church today? You little sinners, you want to come? You sinners? They wouldn't be wrong, but it's not a great title for any of us in this room. But they were called sinners, and in the group of sinners, it probably meant that there was sexual immorality going on. It meant that there was some thieving going on. It meant that there was lying going on. It meant that they were spiritually bankrupt and morally corrupt, and that everybody else looked at them as just trash and low-class people because of the mistakes that they were currently making. Not that they had past mistakes, they were currently walking in those mistakes, and Jesus is eating with these kinds of people. Again, even today, many of us struggle with this. We are a lot of head knowledge, but they didn't have a lot of heart compassion. You ever met a mean Christian? Like sometimes Christians, they can know the scripture, they spit it out, but they're so mean. Like, how did you get so mean? And you know the word so well. It's because there's a divorce between their head and their heart. And what they know has impacted their heart. It's the same for the Pharisees. They knew the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. They knew it word for word. They had to learn it when they were about 12 years old. They were brilliant. They were intelligent. They were arrogant. They were critical. And they kept people out while Jesus was letting people in. So they were bothered that he was letting people in who they saw as low-class people. Isn't that amazing?